In the construction industry, falls account for more than half of all fatal accidents, and scaffolders are constantly at risk of falling when erecting and dismantling scaffolds. The SG4 guidance booklet, which was introduced in March 2000 by the National Access and Scaffolding Confederation, describes a safe system of work for erecting and dismantling independent scaffolds formed of steel tubes and fittings. The Health and Safety Executive and the majority of construction companies have endorsed this guidance and expect it to be put into effect on sites. Part 1 of this video illustrates the SG4 safe system of work and how SGB wants to apply it for the safe erection and dismantling of independent scaffolds. Part 2 will show how SGB is leading the way in the application of SG4 and has developed a method for the safe erection and dismantling of birdcage scaffolds. SG4 is a safe system of work designed to protect you from injury during all stages of erecting and dismantling scaffolds. You must be issued with and wear fall arrest equipment, and training should be given on its use, inspection and maintenance. The basic rule of SG4 is that wherever possible during erecting and dismantling scaffolds, scaffolders must be prevented from falling by guardrails. The minimum requirement is a single guardrail on all lifts and double guardrails plus toe boards on all working lifts. In addition, the method of work should be used that limits the distance you can walk out on an exposed edge to the maximum length of the material used. This is known as the tunnelling method. When working off a minimum platform of 3 properly supported boards protected by a single guardrail, you do not need to clip on. However, where edge protection is not possible, you must clip on to the first suitable anchor point located at 4 meters or more above the ground. You must also clip on when raising or lowering working platform boards and when not working within a protected area of 3 properly supported boards and a single guardrail. It is very important that ladders are put in place as soon as possible during erection and removed as late as possible during dismantling. Never climb up and down the scaffold structure. In addition to always following the SG4 safe system of work and prior to commencing any job, all scaffolders must be made aware of any significant hazards involved via a pre-start toolbox talk on the risk assessment for that job. You must sign the toolbox talk form to confirm that you have been given this advice and understand it. At SGB there are 2 main types of scaffolding equipment in use, tube and fitting and the SGB patented cup lock system. Cup lock is ideally suited to SG4 because it's simple to connect and walking distances near exposed edges are shorter compared with tube and fitting. However, the SG4 system of work is the same for both types. The standard procedure for erecting an independent tube and fitting scaffold is to base out the scaffold and erect the first non-working lift with transoms properly spaced every 1.5 or 1.2 metres as appropriate. The lift should always be boarded out from below using a minimum of 3 properly supported boards centrally placed with a maximum gap of 1 board wide on either side of the non-working lift. If the gap exceeds that, extra boards will be required. For the purpose of this demonstration video, a ladder access tower will be incorporated. However, in many cases, ladders are fitted internally within the scaffold. The principle of progressive installation of ladders is the same. To access the first lift, place a temporary ladder to the ladder tower or scaffold, ensuring that one scaffolder firmly foots and steadies the ladder while another climbs. Once on the platform, your first job is to progressively install single guardrails, working away from the ladder access point. The installation of single guardrails on all non-working lifts is a basic requirement of SG4. These single guardrails must remain in place for the life of the scaffold to protect you when dismantling or altering the scaffold. Another key safety feature is the requirement to clip on when raising or lowering the working platform to prevent you falling into the gap left by the removal of the boards. Permanent ladders must be included into the scaffold as soon as possible during erection and removed as late as possible during dismantling, preferably within a purpose-built ladder access tower. At this point, a scaff tag or a scaffold incomplete sign should be attached to warn others that the scaffold is still under construction. Under normal working conditions, the scaffold must be tied progressively to the building at the recommended intervals for the type of scaffolding being used, or according to the design. For the purposes of this demonstration, however, wing braces have been added to provide extra stability. As soon as you climb onto the second non-working lift, you must clip onto the nearest ledger, as there is no edge protection at this point. This is to prevent the risk of a fall while raising materials and constructing the next stage of the ladder access tower. As this is the landing platform for the next ladder, double guardrails must be fitted to the permanent ladder access before stepping onto the main body of the scaffold. When working outside the protection of the single guardrail, you must be clipped on. However, you are allowed to walk out into the unprotected area on a minimum of 3 properly supported boards to the maximum length of the materials being used, and then you must clip on. Therefore, the maximum distance you can ever traverse on a tube and fitting scaffold is 6.4 metres or 21 feet. This distance is much shorter using the cup lock system, as the scaffolder can install guardrails from within a metre of the protected area. Working systematically away from the ladder, single guardrails should be progressively fitted to all non-working lifts, including stop-end guardrails and internal guardrails where falls could occur. If these guardrails are not fitted and left on non-working lifts, it is plain for all to see that you have not been working to SG4, so you have not been working safely. SGB wants you to work safely at all times. Once all the hemps and single guardrails are in place, the ledgers and transoms for the next lift can be installed without the need for you to attach your harness. When passing up materials through the scaffold, you must either work off a fully boarded platform with double guardrails or be clipped on. Providing a single guardrail is protecting you, you do not have to clip on whilst erecting the next lift. However, before raising the working platform, you must attach your harness to a ledger or transom above your head. Starting at one end of the scaffold, raise all the boards, working systematically back to the safety of the ladder, and repeat this operation on the other side of the scaffold. Also ensure that the ladder platform has double guardrails and toe boards attached before placing and securing the next ladder. Working lifts must be fully boarded out, but initially leave a maximum 1 board gap either side so that you can easily clip onto ledgers when completing the lift. Once again, you must clip onto the first ledger and construct double guardrails around the ladder tower before stepping out onto the main body of the scaffold. The method of work on the working lift is exactly the same as for non-working lifts, except that double guardrails must be installed. Remember that you must only walk out on the platform to the maximum length of the next guardrail, and then clip on to a safe anchor point before fitting the tube. It's a simple rule. Work away from the ladder when erecting guardrails, work back to the ladder when raising or lowering boards. Once all the hemps and guardrails are in place, complete the boarding for the working lift and attach toe boards. By working in this way, SG4 minimises the use of the harness to only those activities where you are exposed to a fall, and the single guardrails are already in place to protect you during the dismantling process. All dismantling activities should be carried out progressively, reversing the erection process. Start at one end, progressively working along the elevation, removing toe boards and guardrails until you reach the ladder stage. When passing down or passing up materials, you must be in a position of safety, either on a fully boarded platform with double guardrails or clipped on. Climb down the ladder and clip on. Working away from the ladder, you can now safely reach up and progressively pull down boards to form a safe minimum working platform at least 3 boards wide. Once the boards are all laid, you are working in a position of safety because the single guardrail remains from when the scaffold was erected and you no longer need to be clipped on. SG4 is a progressive or tunnelling method of work, designed to minimise the use of the harness. However, your harness is a life-saving piece of equipment and it must be maintained, worn and used correctly. Each day before starting work, it is essential that you give your harness and lanyard a combined visual and physical examination. Run the webbing through your hands and check for cuts, tears, abrasion, scorch marks, burns, discoloration or chemical attack. Slight damage to outer fibres of the webbing and occasional yarn may be considered harmless, but serious reduction in width or thickness or serious distortion to the weave pattern should lead to the harness and or lanyard being rejected. Look for any broken stitching, loose or worn threads, pulling or cuts. Inspect all buckles, D-rings and hooks for signs of damage, distortion, cracks or corrosion, and make sure that all moving and working parts operate freely. A harness and lanyard should be scrapped immediately if subjected to any fall or if the webbing, stitching or metalware is not to standard. If you're concerned about the suitability of your harness, speak to your supervisor or manager. In any event, a competent person must inspect lanyards and harnesses every 3 months and fill in a record book. Never attempt to repair or modify your harness and lanyard. The correct way to wear a harness is to attach the lanyard to the D-ring if not already attached, and then put your arms through the shoulder straps. Connect each leg strap in turn to the correct buckle and adjust, ensuring that the webbing is not twisted. Connect the chest strap and adjust for comfort. When standing upright, the harness should be comfortable without undue pressure on your chest, shoulders or around the pelvis. When using your harness, and wherever possible, anchor points should be above waist height. In order of preference, you should always clip onto ledges with load-bearing couplers, guardrails with load-bearing couplers, transoms supported by ledges in the lift above and fixed at both ends by single couplers, any couplock ledges, guardrails and transoms attached to 2 standards. It is not safe to clip onto standards, nor is it safe to clip onto ledges or guardrails supported by single couplers, ledges or guardrails within a bay where it has a joint, transoms below foot level, transoms underslung below ledges, braces or cuplock intermediate transoms. Also, when raising or lowering materials, scaffolders should either clip on or work from a fully boarded platform with double guardrails. Although SG4 was primarily developed for independent scaffolds, it can also be applied to birdcage structures. SGB has designed a safe method of erecting and dismantling birdcage scaffolds using the principles of SG4 that can be equally applied to cuplock or tube and fitting scaffolds. Once again, scaffolders should employ a methodical way of working, which, for a cuplock birdcage, begins by basting out the scaffold and screw jacks, using sole boards where appropriate, and erecting 3-metre standards. The key aspect of the SGB method is that for non-working lifts, only the outside perimeter and every other bay is boarded out and enclosed by single guardrails. This allows you to work within protected areas while erecting the next part of the scaffold. Transoms have to be installed on the boarded bays of non-working lifts, but not on the unboarded bays. Ideally, the ladder access should be incorporated centrally within the birdcage scaffold and secured in the normal way. Always board out the scaffold from below and keep to this method every time boards are raised. On non-working lifts, a maximum one board gap is allowable on either side. However, there should not be any lapped boards, as these can be a trip hazard, except on the returns of tube and fitting scaffolds. The overlap of the boards on the transoms should not exceed 6 inches or 150 millimeters and must not be less than 2 inches or 50 millimeters. It's good practice to remove some cup-lock ledges in the base lift to provide easy access to the ladder without risk of tripping, and to attach appropriate signage advising that the scaffold is incomplete before moving on to the first lift. There is no requirement for you to clip on while working on the first lift, as there are no 4-meter anchor points at this stage. However, you should work progressively away from the ladder access, installing a single guardrail around both the perimeter and the unboarded bays. Once the single guardrails are all in place, progressively install standards, ledgers and transoms for the working lift, remembering that on the working lift every bay is fully transomed to properly support the boards. It's a two-man job to place the cup-lock transoms on the previously unboarded internal bays. Before raising the working platform, you must clip onto a ledger above your head to prevent the risk of falling into the gap created by the removal of the boards. Remember, this is a key safety feature of the SG4 safe system of work and needs to become second nature. On the working lift, all the boards are laid in the same plane, although there will be gaps at the internal ledgers which will need to be covered at a later stage. The ladder platform for the second ladder must have double guardrails and toe boards attached before you move on to the working lift. Working progressively away from the ladder, clip on while installing double guardrails all around the perimeter, although you may unclip and walk out at an exposed edge, providing you do not travel further than the length of the material being installed. In this case, a 2.5 metre cup-lock guardrail. Once all double guardrails are in place, toe boards should be attached and sloped to reduce the gaps. Under working conditions, any gaps that can't be covered with boards must be boarded over with plywood before the scaffold is declared fit for use. All dismantling activities should be carried out progressively, reversing the erection process. Progressively work along the elevation, removing toe boards and a single board from each bay down its complete length to provide space to clip on. Then progressively remove guardrails, working in opposite directions back towards the safety of the ladder access. When passing down or passing up materials, you must be in a position of safety, either on a safe working platform with double guardrails or clipped on. Once all guardrails have been removed, climb down the ladder to the non-working lift. Reach up and progressively pull down boards, working away from the ladder to form a safe working platform. This must be the width of the bay, less one board down each side. You must continue to use the SG4 safe system of work and clip onto a ledger above your head when pulling down boards. Once the boards are all laid, you're able to work in a position of safety, because the single guardrail remains from when the scaffold was erected. This video has demonstrated how to erect and dismantle independent tied scaffolds using the SG4 system, the correct way to inspect, wear and use your safety harness, and how to erect and dismantle birdcage scaffolds to the SG4 standard. Half of all fatal accidents on construction sites are caused by falls from height. So by ensuring these simple methods are followed on every job, you will virtually eliminate the biggest hazard faced by scaffolders.